That is intriguing.
Welcome to the Domin Recap channel. Today we're going to watch a comedy sci-fi film titled Sorry to Bother You. In Oakland, a guy named Cassius shows up to a job interview at a telemarketing company called Regale View, bringing along a high school trophy and a fake Employee of the Month plaque to impress the hiring manager. The manager, Anderson, sees through everything almost immediately. One of the phone numbers on the resume belongs to a friend named Salvador, but Anderson doesn't seem to mind at all. He'll take anyone willing to show that kind of initiative, and just like that, Cassius lands himself a commission-only gig. The following morning, he asks his girlfriend Detroit whether she ever thinks about getting old and eventually dying, confessing that he's afraid of reaching the end of his life without having done anything that truly mattered. The conversation shifts into something more intimate, but they get interrupted when a neighbor walks in and catches them in an awkward situation. He flips on the television and stumbles across an advertisement for a company called Worry-Free, which describes itself as a revolutionary lifestyle model where employees live inside the facility itself, provided with food and beds as part of the deal. The whole thing is pitched as a perfect arrangement, but it has an unmistakably prison-like quality, particularly since the contracts workers sign are permanent and binding for life. On his way to work, Cassius is stopped by his uncle Sergio, who reminds him that he's 4 months behind on rent. Sergio explains he's buried in debt and the bank is threatening to take the house, giving Cassius 2 weeks to come up with the money. At the office, Cassius notices a sleek, high-end elevator tucked at the back of the building and catches a glimpse of the company's owner, a man whose name gets bleeped out every time anyone says it. A manager named Johnny walks Cassius to his desk and runs through the basics. A light on the desk lights up whenever he closes a sale, and if he works hard enough, he might eventually get promoted to the upper floors as a power caller, where the real money supposedly lives. Cassius makes his first attempt at a call and mentally pictures himself materializing in front of a couple eating breakfast. But the man hangs up the moment Cassius says hello. The second call connects to a woman who is clearly busy doing something else entirely and also hangs up fast. On the third try, an elderly woman actually stays on the line, but explains she has no money because her husband is hospitalized with cancer. Cassius freezes, glances at the motivational sign reminding him to follow the script, which instructs him to turn any problem into a selling point, and awkwardly tells her the encyclopedia he's pitching includes health tips, at which point she hangs up too. The following day isn't much better. His coworker Langston eventually finds this amusing and suggests that Cassius try using a white voice. Cassius is puzzled, noting that people often tell him he already sounds fairly white, but Langston clarifies that he means something more like the Will Smith version, polished and proper. What he's actually describing goes further than that, a voice that sounds unburdened, as if its owner has no financial worries and genuinely believes the future is bright. Langston adds that white people don't literally sound this way. It's more like the version of themselves they secretly wish they could project. He demonstrates the voice, and the shift is so dramatic it's almost like watching someone get dubbed over in a foreign film. Later, trying to grab a coffee from the break room machine, Cassius finds it empty. His coworker Squeeze explains that management even charges them for snacks. Squeeze invites him out to a bar that evening, offering to cover the tab. That same night, Detroit is finishing up her shift as a sign dancer on the street. Cassius swings by to pick her up and introduces her to Squeeze, telling him she's a genuinely talented artist. At the bar, the group catches a news segment reporting that police have clashed with demonstrators protesting against Worry-Free, whose lifetime contracts have been labeled by activists as a modern form of slavery. The company's CEO, a man named Steve, responded in an interview by arguing that the arrangement doesn't qualify as slavery simply because no one signs the contracts under the threat of physical harm. The protests are being led by a group called Left Eye Faction, whose members wear a distinctive black mark beneath their left eye. One activist explains on camera that traditional employment has nearly vanished because Worry-Free has been quietly absorbing every industry it can reach. The group shakes off the news and gets back to enjoying the evening. When it comes time to make a toast, Cassius surprises everyone by demonstrating his newly perfected white voice, leaving the table speechless. The mood loosens up, and the conversation turns back to work. Squeeze lays it out plainly. The whole power collar promise is a carrot dangled in front of employees to keep them from giving up and walking out. He slides a stack of flyers across the table and tells everyone they need to organize a proper union if they ever want to see fair pay. The next morning, Cassius heads back to Sergio's place and tells him he'll have the full rent amount by Friday. Sergio barely reacts. He explains that even that won't be enough at this point because the bank has already moved forward on the house. Cassius needs to start thinking about finding somewhere else to live. Back at the office, Cassius starts putting the white voice to work on real calls, and the results are immediate. Johnny practically sprints to his desk every time a sale goes through, cheering him on and dropping hints that the higher-ups have already noticed and that a promotion might not be far off. It's also around this time that it becomes clear Detroit has picked up a part-time shift at Regale View as well. The following morning, Squeeze gathers the team before the shift starts and walks them through the plan for their first act of collective resistance. On his signal, phones down, everyone will stop working simultaneously for 20 minutes. He asks if anyone wants to back out now, and Cassius hesitates just slightly before throwing his support behind the idea. On the way to his desk, Cassius finds himself staring again at the private elevator in the back, and this time Mr. Bleep notices him looking. When Squeeze gives the signal that afternoon, the floor erupts into chanting and noise directed squarely at the company. A short while later, Cassius is called into the manager's office. Assuming the worst, he launches into a passionate speech about workers' rights before anyone can get a word in. The managers let him finish and then calmly tell him to collect his things because he's being moved to the first floor. He's been promoted to power caller. The next morning, Cassius arrives in the nicest suit he owns. Diana escorts him to the private elevator, which requires her to type in a comically long password before it responds. On the upper floor, Cassius finally comes face to face with Mr. Bleep, who is also using a white voice and instructs Cassius that this is how everyone speaks up here. Mr. Bleep breaks down the business. They deal in two categories of power: firepower, meaning weapons, and manpower, meaning worry-free's contracted workforce. The implication hits Cassius hard. Because those lifetime contracts carry no wages, the labor is essentially free, which means products can be manufactured at a fraction of normal cost. He hesitates, visibly uncomfortable, but the moment they tell him his cut, he sits down and gets to work. Out on the street, later, back at her sign dancing post, she's visited by Squeeze, who turns out to have a few moves of his own with a sign and mentions he helped organize sign twirlers in Los Angeles as well. Detroit tells him she channels her activism through her artwork, and Squeeze asks, with some curiosity, about her relationship with Cassius, since he doesn't come across as particularly radical. She insists everything is fine. Hours go by and Cassius is still upstairs buried in onboarding materials, new rules, new products, a whole new script to memorize. Detroit eventually gives up waiting and calls someone else for a lift. When Cassius finally wraps up and makes it to her gallery, he apologizes and breaks the news about the promotion, admitting he'd been sitting on it because he wasn't sure yet if it was actually going to stick. She asks what he's selling now, and he smoothly redirects the conversation toward her artwork instead. The next morning, Cassius finds Squeeze outside running another organizing session with the team. He pulls Squeeze aside and tells him that even though he's a power caller now, he still supports what they're doing. He just needs to do it from a distance, and he brings up Sergio's situation as part of his reasoning. Settled into his new office upstairs, he makes his first power caller sale, mentally picturing himself appearing in a bathroom alongside a senior Japanese businessman. Speaking in his white voice, Mr. Bleep gathers everyone to announce that Cassius closed a massive deal on his very first day. From that point on, the sales keep coming, and before long Cassius has a new car, his own apartment, and furniture that actually matches. One morning he turns on the news and sees footage of his former co-workers on strike outside Regale View, blocking the entrance and refusing to let anyone through. When Detroit wakes up beside him, Cassius greets her in his white voice without even realizing he's doing it. She says she can't keep doing this. Watching him walk through the picket line every day feels like watching him turn his back on everyone they know. And if he crosses that line tomorrow morning, they're finished. The day after, the same brutal routine plays out at the entrance, and Cassius tries to move through quickly. An activist manages to get close enough to hit him in the head with a soda can, opening a cut. Rather than going home to deal with it, Cassius gets it bandaged and goes straight back to his desk. Mr. Bleep finds this so impressive that he invites Cassius to a party being thrown by the company's CEO. Steve kicks off his party by consuming what turns out to be illegal sugar, and Cassius finally gets his chance to meet the man face to face. Cassius heads to Steve's office where he's offered some of the illegal sugar served on a decorative horse plate, and he accepts. Steve explains he has a significant business proposition and wants Cassius to watch a short film that lays the whole thing out, but first Cassius needs to use the bathroom. Heading down the corridor, he pushes open the wrong door and steps into a strange room containing a single stall. A voice from inside says it's in tremendous pain. Cassius opens the stall door and recoils at what he sees, a humanoid creature with the body of a horse, enormous and distressed, begging for mercy. The film is done in stop-motion animation and traces the history of human tool use from the earliest prehistoric implements forward. The narration argues that despite all of humanity's ingenuity, physical labor has always been constrained by the limitations of the human body. Worry-free's answer to this problem is a chemical compound that rewires human biology. making people significantly stronger, more durable, and far more productive. The side effect is that it transforms them into horse-like humanoid creatures the company has named Equisapiens. The chemical, the film notes, is visually indistinguishable from sugar. Cassius immediately starts spiraling, convinced he's already been dosed, but Steve assures him that what he consumed tonight was purely recreational and carried no transformative properties. Cassius listens to all of it and tells Steve that this particular line he won't cross, regardless of the money. The next morning the protesters arrive wearing the can wigs, which has the effect of reclaiming the image on their own terms. When the security team moves in to push them back and clear the path, they slam directly into Detroit's sculptures, which have been positioned and disguised throughout the crowd. Cassius tries to get his people somewhere safe and puts in a call for the backup he arranged, but before anything can develop, a guard catches him from behind and he goes down hard. He comes to inside the back of a security van. Through the small window he can see the street still in chaos, protesters being shoved and struck on all sides. Then the situation shifts in a way nobody anticipated, and within minutes the van door is torn open and Cassius steps out free. Afterward, Cassius moves his things back into Sergio's garage. When Detroit comes to see him that evening and they finally get a quiet moment together, it gets interrupted by a sudden and overwhelming wave of physical pain. The sugar at Steve's party was not what he was told it was, and the transformation has already begun.